So it's been 8 years. January 2017, Yahya Jammeh leaves the Gambia after, 22 years in power. A huge moment.
Absolutely huge. A collective sigh of relief, as you said. But now, well, now there's this talk, this possibility of him coming back.
And that possibility, it feels like it's threatening to just rip everything open again. One of the country's most painful chapters, really.
It really is. And what we're seeing unfold is this fundamental clash. On one hand, you've got the Constitution. Technically, Jammeh, like any Gambian citizen, has the right to return.
A free citizen.
Right, as a free citizen. But then, slam. That right hits a wall, a massive wall of legal ramifications from those 22 years.
So the big question is, has the Gambia's democracy actually matured enough in these 8 years to handle that? Or is it still kind of trapped?
Trapped in a web, yeah. A web of past compromises, political deals, and, well, impunity, frankly. That's the fear.
Okay, so let's really unpack this. We've looked at the Truth Commission findings, reports on the current political landscape, the alliances, and what people are feeling on the ground. Our goal here is to understand the legal side, what must happen, versus the political tangles, and what the potential outcomes look like if Jammeh actually does return from Equatorial Guinea.
It's essentially the ultimate stress test for Gambian democracy.
And understanding that test means going back to just how tight his grip was.
Exactly. We have to remember the context.
22 years, 1994 to 2017. And the sources we looked at, they describe his desire to return in some really visceral terms.
They don't mince words.
No. One bit calls his maneuvering a manifestation of greed, insincerity, power hunger, and absolute madness. That doesn't exactly sound like someone who's accepted retirement.
No, it reveals something about unchecked power, doesn't it? The sheer addiction to it. Jammeh hasn't seemed to accept he's just an ordinary citizen now.
And that life as president, especially a dictator, the sources paint a picture of, well, insulation.
Complete insulation. No bills, no taxes, everything covered. Living like a king, basically, funded by the public. Giving that up, that's a psychological cliff edge for someone like him.
It's a fall from the absolute peak.
A fall some people just can't seem to stomach. And the tragic irony, as the sources point out, is while he's protected in exile, many of his own loyal followers are left behind, often facing poverty and hardship.
It's stark. But let's focus on the human cost for the Gambian people. Because that's why his return isn't just politically awkward, it's explosive.
Yes. That 22-year fistful dictatorship, as it's called, the cost wasn't just political, it was deeply psychological. We're talking about widespread anxiety, health anxiety too, low mood, depression.
Real trauma.
Endemic trauma, poor sleep, constant fear. It wasn't just about losing your job if you stepped out of line.
No, it was more pervasive, right? Fear of who you talk to, fear your neighbor might report you.
Exactly. That systemic tension day in, day out for decades. And the sources say, even after he left, that trauma lingered. People had sleepless nights, psychological torment, just from the release of that pressure.
And throughout all this, the alleged suffering, he's never admitted anything.
Nothing. He never conceded the election defeat. He's never offered an apology, never shown any remorse to the Gambian people. He just left, unapologetically.
Which must just compound the trauma for victims.
Absolutely. So, okay, given that backdrop, the psychological toll, the lack of remorse, what exactly is he facing legally if he lands back in the Gambia? He can cite the Constitution all he wants.
But he can't claim immunity from prosecution.
Not based on the evidence gathered.
Yeah.
And that brings us squarely to the TRRC, the Truth, Reconciliation, and Reparations Commission.
This was a major undertaking for the Gambia.
Unprecedented. They had never attempted anything like this before, a national reckoning.
Yeah.
The commission spent years documenting atrocities between 94 and 2017.
And this wasn't just like a political debate. It was investigative.
Deeply investigative. And the specifics they uncovered, they form the core of the legal case against him. It's a devastating catalog.
Such as
state-sanctioned extrajudicial killings, people disappearing without a trace, systematic torture, often by his notorious jungler squad, sexual violence as a weapon, and just rampant, staggering corruption, plundering the state.
Wow.
And critically, the TRC didn't just point fingers vaguely. It found Yahya Jammeh personally responsible for multiple crimes against humanity.
Personally responsible. That's a huge legal designation with international weight.
Immense weight. And President Adama Barrow's government officially accepted these findings back in 2022.
So they've committed to prosecuting.
Yes. They pledged to prosecute Jammeh and his key accomplices. That's the legal imperative we talked about. But to make it happen, they need two key things:
Which
First, a dedicated special prosecutor's office, and second, something more complex, a hybrid court.
a hybrid court. What does that mean in practice? A mix of local and international.
Exactly. Gambian judges working alongside international legal experts. It would operate under both Gambian law and international criminal standards. It's about ensuring the trial is fair, robust, and meets global benchmarks.
Okay.
So, connecting the dots. You have this mountain of TRRC evidence, the finding of personal responsibility for crimes against humanity, and the government's pledge to act. If Jammeh sets foot on Gambian soil, legally speaking,
Yeah.
his arrest and prosecution seem unavoidable.
That hybrid court is the mechanism waiting for him.
It's the hammer, legally speaking.
Right.
But the politics, that's where the hammer gets complicated.
Right. The sources call the situation dangerously explosive, and it seems it's not just because the victim's demands, but because of President Barrow's own political situation.
It really throws a harsh light on, well, compromised governance. You have Barrow's party, the MPP.
National People's Party?
Right. They controversially formed an alliance with a faction of Jammeh's old party, the APRC.
The Alliance for Patriotic Repatriation and Construction.
That's the one. And they did this alliance basically to help Barrow win re-election.
Hold on. You ally with the political machine that propped up the very dictator you've pledged to prosecute. That seems problematic.
It's the textbook definition of a political minefield. Short-term gain, potentially sacrificing long-term justice. And it gets messier because the APRC itself is split.
How so?
There's one faction, the No Alliance movement, who are still fiercely loyal to Jammeh in exile. They see him as the only real leader. Then there's the other faction that made this deal, this marriage of convenience with Barrow.
A marriage now reportedly on the rocks, according to some sources.
Indeed. But the damage was done. That alliance, however shaky now, fundamentally undermined the credibility of the whole transitional justice process from the start.
How does it actively compromise things, though? Is it just bad optics, or does it actually block progress?
It's more than optics. It can be quite insidious. The sources highlight that many individuals who were key figures in Jammeh's regime, people who helped implement his policies, they now hold important positions within Barrow's own administration.
So they're inside the system.
Right. And they can subtly obstruct things, maybe block funding for the special prosecutor's office, delay resources for the hybrid court, influence local law enforcement. It creates an environment where pursuing Jammeh vigorously is seen as destabilizing the current government coalition.
So the commitment to justice might be there on paper for the international community.
But internally, it risks being sabotaged by the very political realities Barrow created to stay in power.
Wow. Okay. Beyond the politicians, what about the Gambian public? They must be watching this closely. Are they united on what should happen?
Far from it. The division is deep. On one side, you absolutely have the victims, their families, justice advocates. For them, Jammeh means repression, trauma, the end of the rule of law. They lived it.
But then there's this other group. The sources talk about nostalgic populists.
Yeah.
What's that about? Where does the nostalgia come from after all that?
It's complex, but it seems strongest in some rural areas. For some people, Jammeh's era wasn't only about fear. He was very good at visible, centralized projects, infrastructure, schools.
Things people could see.
Exactly. For communities that felt neglected before, these projects created an illusion of progress, of investment. So they romanticize what they see as stability or development, often downplaying or ignoring the repression that enabled it.
So you have these two very different narratives about the same period.
Polar opposite narratives. And that means if Jammeh returns, you could see direct confrontations between victims demanding justice and fiercely loyal supporters. It's a real tinderbox.
Which leads to the question, why hasn't he faced justice already while in exile? What's shielding him?
His host, President Teodoro Obiang of Equatorial Guinea. He's another long-serving ruler, and he has flatly refused any extradition requests.
So as long as he stays there under Obiang's protection.
He's relatively safe from international warrants, practically speaking. But, and this is the crucial point, if he returns voluntarily to the Gambia, the whole international dynamic shifts instantly.
How so? The international community has a stake in this, right?
A huge stake. Think about it. The UN, the EU, ECOWAS, the West African bloc, that actually intervened to ensure Jammeh left in 2017 the African Union. They've all poured political energy and money into supporting Gambia's democratic transition and its justice process.
They wouldn't just stand by if he came back and nothing happened.
Absolutely not. They wouldn't tolerate him just walking free, or worse, trying to re-enter politics. The pressure on President Barrow to act and act decisively would be immediate and intense.
Which brings us right back to Barrow. If Jammeh lands, it really is, as the sources say, a historic test for him. Does he uphold accountability, or does he prioritize political survival?
It defines his legacy, really, and the potential scenarios seem quite clearly laid out based on the legal realities and the political pressures. There are basically 3 paths forward if Jammeh returns. None of them are easy for Barrow.
Okay, walk us through them. Scenario 1.
Immediate arrest and trial. This is what the law demands. It's what the international community expects. It's what victims are crying out for.
But the political fallout?
Potentially massive. It would almost certainly shatter his alliance with the APRC faction. It could provoke unrest among Jammeh's loyalists. Politically risky for Barrow's stability.
Okay, scenario 2.
Political bargaining and delay. This might be the path of least resistance, politically, in the short term. Barrow could try to stall. Say he needs time, needs to negotiate, needs to ensure stability.
Kick the can down the road.
Essentially. But the cost here is credibility. Victims, rights groups, international partners, they'd see it as a total betrayal. It makes his government look weak, compromised, and unwilling to enforce its own laws against the powerful.
Damaging in a different way. And the third scenario.
Public outcry and unrest. This happens if Jammeh returns and there are no immediate consequences. If he's seen moving freely, holding rallies, acting like he's immune,
People wouldn't stand for it.
you could see mass protests erupting, civil resistance. This scenario could force the government's hand through sheer public anger, potentially destabilizing the country even more severely than the first scenario.
So no easy options.
None at all. And the underlying message, if Barrow fails to act, is chilling. The sources are clear. It reinforces the idea that justice in the Gambia, maybe everywhere, is only for the little guy. The powerful get away with it.
It really does feel like a moral test then, not just for Barrow, but for the whole country. Choosing justice over convenience, truth over silence.
Accountability over fear. That's the essence of it. And we shouldn't forget the potential positive outcome buried in all this risk. Closure for the victims. For those who lost family, dignity, respect under his rule, having him face them in court, having the truth documented and acknowledged in a formal legal process, that's incredibly powerful. It's potentially the only way to really begin healing that national trauma.
So his return, paradoxically, could be the necessary catalyst for real healing.
It could be. Confronting the truth is often the first step. The Gambia is known as a forgiving nation, but that forgiveness, that healing, can likely only start once the truth is faced head-on in court.
History's verdict really hangs in the balance here. Will this awful chapter be closed with accountability?
Or will it fester? The sources end on a stark note. Jammeh might feel safe running and hiding in exile now.
But if he comes home?
Justice is waiting, long delayed perhaps, but ultimately it seems inescapable. You can run, but you can't hide forever.